Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the user marketing track. And we are here with Bill Rice. His talk is Design Websites That Generate Leads. Bill Rice is the founder, CEO of Kaleido, a digital agency focused on lead generation. He designs websites that generate leads using WordPress, and his agency specializes in serving mortgage lenders, insurance agencies, and law firms. So welcome to Bill. Take it away, and we will look for your questions in the chat box.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thanks to all the WordPress WordCamp Kent organizers. You guys have done a fabulous job already. And Steve, obviously, just an incredible opening talk. So hopefully you got to see that. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about designing websites to actually generate leads, and just kind of a bit of a background on myself. Like Amanda said, I own an agency. But really, this topic specifically, I'm so passionate about because for the community and for me early on in 2007, 2008, actually, I ran a software company, and Kaleido had to pivot in the middle of sort of a mortgage meltdown. And that's when, coming out of the lead generation world and out of a software community that did CRMs for large call centers, I kind of stumbled across this thing called Studio Press. I can't remember if it was called Genesis or Studio Press at the time, but basically gave you like 10 themes that you could use. And to get through that crisis, I was kind of peddling the design and development, really using these templates to actually create websites. And one of the things that I found out very quickly when I started, I was selling websites for bargain basement prices, I think, a few $100. And then I realized through that process that if I could actually tweak those designs in such a way to actually help them generate sales leads, I could charge thousands and then eventually tens of thousands of dollars through websites. And so really my goal today is to show you this formula for how to tweak your designs and how to position your websites with some common patterns that will actually reliably generate leads when you hand them over to the client, which is ultimately what most of our clients want us to do. So let's dive in here real quick. First and foremost, this is always the top question in all the chat rooms, and even when we're doing this live, people want to know, are you going to give us the slides? And so, yeah, absolutely. Set up a little bit of a mechanism here. Again, a little bit of a lead generation trick, but you can text designs to 313-488-3400, and I'm going to send you all the slides. I've actually turned on commenting and everything in Google Slides, so you can actually drop some comments or ask me questions or text back there to that number and ask any questions that are generated as we kind of go through this process. So go ahead and take that down, save it from taking some notes, and it also kind of give you a little insight into a little technique that you can use even on your websites to generate some leads. So here's our overall agenda for today, and I'll be fairly quickly, I'm going to kind of move through this process so we can get to questions, because hopefully I'll key up a bunch of questions in your mind about how to use these patterns. The other thing that hopefully will be beneficial for you to actually get the slides is I've actually done something a little different today, and I've actually organized this presentation to be more or less a swipe file. So if you're not familiar with that term, it's literally something you should be doing anyway, but just accumulating some good examples, screenshots of things that you like or you think that are interesting. And then regularly, you're actually going into that swipe file as you're doing projects for clients or you're doing your own work and looking for sort of sparks and ideas and inspiration to continue to design your own. And so that's the design of this presentation, that you can actually see some of these patterns. You can hold on to them, pull it out for inspiration. You can steal anything from this presentation. But we're going to start with kind of understanding how people sort of go through the online buying process, which is really important if you're actually trying to design something that will engage that visitor and actually inspire them to take some sort of action. A lot of times, a lot of us are not familiar with just even the concept of generating a lead or generating a sales inquiry. So I'm going to talk about some of the principles and laws of that. And then we're going to get right into WordPress and the design itself. And we're going to talk about some of the standard elements of a website and a page. And then we're going to start to break into and dive into the different patterns. And then hopefully we're going to have plenty of time for questions. So why are we here? Why should you be here? Why do I hope that you're here? Well, first and foremost, a lot of us use premium WordPress themes. And one thing that I noticed even back in the days when I was using them more frequently, um, generally these themes and the theme designers are trying to kind of give everybody a Swiss Army knife. And so often, sort of out of the box, without any sort of customization, they're so generalized that they're just not designed to be engaging to the visitor. And so as a result, often WordPress themes, even the premium ones out of the box, are just simply not effective for actually generating or encouraging that visitor to inquire with the client. And there's a reason for kind of these. So first and foremost, like I said, they're Swiss Army knives often in the sense that they don't really have kind of a specific purpose or a proper purpose. And they're so generalized that they're a little bit weak. Oftentimes they're designed without knowledge. More and more people are designing themes for specific industries and organizations or types of business. But still, even there, oftentimes we as designers and developers, if we're not sort of directly engaging and understanding the business of our client, we're again sort of designing in a generalized way without the knowledge of what's required or the psychology that's required to sort of convert these into opportunities, these visitors into opportunities, or even to talk specifically in the context of the business. So we can fix all of this if, again, Steve in the keynote was kind of talking about software engineering. And one of the things that you see kind of outside of WordPress a lot in software engineering is that software engineers get very efficient at coding because they use and reuse patterns of things that they kind of have to do over and over again, or common things that they're programming. You can do the same thing in design. A lot of times, even kind of recently, the design world has taken on some of these sort of concepts and using design systems and those sorts of things. And so that's essentially what I'm trying to do here, is give you a little bit of a design system or a pattern system that you can use over and over again. And then the creativity is just kind of the implementation of the pattern, not coming up with the pattern itself. And then ultimately, hopefully you're here. I'm always unapologetic about this because this is one of the reasons that I love speaking at WordCamp, because so many of you are freelancers or entrepreneurs or individuals who are trying to make a living or maybe even convert over to this as a full-time opportunity. And ultimately, the only way to do that is for us to be able to charge more for the websites that we provide. And ultimately, in my mind, delivering a website that generates sales and revenue is always the quickest way to be able to charge more for those. So before we dig into the patterns, let's talk a little bit about the buying process itself so that we can kind of understand what the user is going through and what we need to do to kind of engage them. So this is the first myth that I like to dispel, is this concept of a sales funnel is what we see on most slides like this. And to me, and in my experience, this is just absolutely not the normal use case. When a buyer or person is looking for something online, they're actually like little cyclones that kind of, if you've ever seen a tornado's path, what actually happens in a tornado is it kind of spins up with some intensity, it touches down, creates kind of some impact, and then oftentimes sort of dissipates and then touches down somewhere else. And to me, that's kind of the mental model that you should use when you're thinking about an online user, because they're touching down, they're seeing you in social media, maybe they're coming across an ad, they're landing on your website, they're doing a little research, they pop back out, maybe you catch them with remarketing. And all this is important because your website and your landing pages kind of have to serve these little incremental moments. And then the thing that you're going to notice in particular on here is oftentimes you'll actually get multiple inquiries to your website. And so you want to give people the opportunity to inquire or to engage with that website in multiple ways, because you don't know exactly kind of where or what one of these little cyclones they're in the process of at the moment. Here's another big, this is a piece of data that I came across in the last probably 6 months or so that has really impacted the way that I develop websites. And this actual study showed that 70% of the decision to buy or to engage with the company or to kind of look for or get that product or service that you sell has already been made the moment that user hits the website. And if you really think about it, this starts to make some sense because a lot of times we've bounced, just think about your own buying behavior, you've bounced sort of all over the web, you've done some research, or maybe you've come across, by the time you actually go to the company's website, you're probably pretty much all the way there saying, hey, I am going to buy this particular type of product, or I'm in the market and plan to buy this sort of service. So once you're at that website, the decision's already been made. You're just trying to figure out, okay, how much is it going to cost? What is the process? When do I make this buying decision? So you're trying to fill in some gaps, but you have probably already made the decision to buy. And so many of our websites are actually positioned totally different. They're actually positioned in such a way where we feel like it's kind of like a magazine that you get in the mail. And then, we think that they're going to kind of flip through. And by the end of the magazine or the end of the book, for instance, they're going to come to a conclusion that, yeah, I want to buy something. It's really not like that. All of that effort, all that research has largely been done. So when they hit the website, you actually kind of want to quickly move them to a place where they have an opportunity to buy, or in the case of a lead, inquire with you to kind of take the next step. So here's the fundamental laws of lead generation, right? You need to, when you're building out your websites, have some core objectives to each and every page you build. It should have a purpose. There should be a definite focus on the page. There should be clarity. This is language and visuals. And then ultimately, this is the beauty of WordPress. It's really powerful to have a strong supportive base. This is where your other content comes into play, your blogs, your other landing pages, to give just a little bit of weight to the site. So if they do want to bounce back out and do some research, or they want to research, a product or service in your context, they can get into that deeper level of content, and WordPress makes that really easy to do. So when we're building out the designs and the page elements, and these are some of the things we're going to talk about when we get into the patterns, there are some essential page elements that you need to consider for each and every page that you're designing, or each and every template. Hopefully you're doing templates. You're not designing every single page in WordPress, but the templates. And the core of those are, what are you going to do with the navigation? How are you going to allow the user to get around? The one, and I've bolded it here because everyone forgets this, I can't tell you the number of pages I've come across that has absolutely no offer on it, regardless of what you're selling, regardless of even a blog post, should have some form of an offer. It may be to get a little more information, maybe to download an ebook or download a checklist. But there should always be some offer on that page. That's the only way you're going to get action, is to offer them something in exchange for them taking an action. Story is something a lot of people are talking about these days. Story is important. This is where your copy is so powerful. A call to action. This kind of links up with the offer. Make sure that you're actually telling them what to do. So much of us, and again, I always say, hey, reflect on your own behavior. So many of us kind of move through websites, and we just scan. We're not paying attention. It's not until somebody actually tells us very clearly what we should do next, do we actually take that action. And then, of course, some mechanism to capture the lead, some mechanism to collect some information, or to get them to actually take some information away. Lead capture doesn't always necessarily mean that you have to fill out kind of the name and the email and the phone number that we traditionally think about. But I also think about lead capture in the sense of, hey, let's go ahead and get you to download something. I might not even ask for the email, but I want to be able to, in more advanced techniques, set that pixel, maybe that Facebook pixel or that Google Ads pixel, so I can get you into my remarketing campaign. So lead capture can be that simple. It can be, especially in this age where we're more concerned about privacy, that can be as valuable a lead capture, because you're getting, even though it's anonymous, you're actually capturing them into sort of your marketing mix. Visuals, credibility, and trust. We're going to show some examples of that. And then the footer. We're doing something very different with the footer. It's kind of a concept of the upside down header, is something that we like to use more and more in the footer. And you're going to see this. This isn't a unique concept to us, but it is pretty powerful. So let's kind of just take before just to kind of level set our brain. Let's talk about the difference between a home page, which is kind of the most recognizable part of any WordPress site or any website that you're building, and a landing page, just to draw a little bit of contrast between what we're kind of expecting them to accomplish. So someone that comes to your home page directly, oftentimes direct. Usually we're not driving or advertising there, but they land on the homepage, and this is what they're trying to accomplish, or what you should be actually serving them with. Problem discovery. They're actually trying to kind of figure through and work through their problem. They may even sort of not know what their problem is yet. They've got some curiosity, or they've got something that's a pain point, but they're really not, they haven't defined it yet. So homepage can help us sort of discover and through that. We're building some goodwill against the company. The credibility and trust always has to be there online because we don't have to get to physical face-to-face interaction. And then ultimately, I like to sort of lay out and talk about it as a roadmap. What are all the things that I can do with you as a company? What does the roadmap look like of all those kind of ways that you can help me, and all those places that potentially I want to go to understand more about you? Whereas, and this is in high contrast, you can even see at the list, kind of the length of the list, a landing page is much more concise, right? Again, keep in mind that 70% rule, right? 70% have already made the decision. So when they land on that landing page, you're actually trying to confirm the actual problem to them. So, hey, you're in the right place. You definitely have this problem. Let me kind of show you the characteristics of it again to confirm everything that you've already been thinking. We want to immediately establish credibility and trust that, hey, we can do what you're looking for, or our product can satisfy the problem that you need or solve the problem, and you should trust us to do that. And then, of course, we're then trying to quickly move to a conversion. So just juxtapositioning the two of these on the left, kind of a traditional homepage. I sort of highlighted calls to action in orange. You can see there's a lot of them here, and there's all kinds of sort of different. I would even probably debate, even though I built this image, that maybe I would do this a slightly different today if I was building a brand new page. And I'm going to actually show you one that we're live working on to just kind of show how our thinking changes over time. But there's a lot of different opportunities because, again, when they land on the home page, you're kind of trying to sort out what their goal is. Whereas if you land on the landing page, which is to the right, you've probably driven in that traffic, or that traffic is somehow kind of funneled into that page in a better way. And so you're actually reducing the calls to action. So on this particular one, we're going to, again, talk about these patterns because you can do them in different ways. I've got sort of a way to capture it, and I've got sort of a second way to capture that. But I'm trying to reduce the amount of action steps or opportunities. And sometimes I do have kind of a primary and a secondary action there. Here you can see kind of a live example of this. Again, we work in financial services a lot. So here's an example of sort of how these two patterns work differently. So if you look at this as Policy Genius, they're an insurance example here. If you look at their homepage, there's essentially here potentially 8 different visitor types, or 8 different use cases, or 8 different scenarios that someone coming directly to their homepage might be in. And so they're trying to kind of satisfy them all and try to figure out who that one user is. So oftentimes our homepages has a lot of different sort of funnels, even though I kind of hate that word, sort of ways to funnel the person to the right place. So there are literally sort of 8 opportunities or 8 themes here to try to attract that one user to kind of quickly get to the right place. Whereas you see here on the right, this is actually driven from an ad. And so they've already kind of pushed the person in here. They know exactly what they're looking to do. So a landing page says, I know exactly kind of what you're doing or what you're trying to do. I'm going to confirm that problem set and then quickly get you to take action. So it's more of a one-to-one relationship. So again, sort of the contrast here. Here's another example from the mortgage industry. A lot of people know Quicken Loans, so I thought it would be interesting here. This is kind of their standard, not necessarily the home page, but this is a landing page in here where they're not really kind of, they understand that you're looking to buy a home, but they don't know, hey, are you researching or are you actually ready to get started and get that loan? And so here's another example of where we kind of have a 2-to-1 scenario and we're sort of routing them. But when you get down to a landing page where they're actually driven in, you can see there's really kind of that 1-to-1. There's only one thing for you to do. They've even kind of moved the chat out of here, sort of an opportunity, but moved it out of the way. So again, kind of gets you to understand the difference between those two approaches. More than anything, I just want to have you understand that you should just never make it harder than it needs to be. Really, when I'm thinking about designing a website or setting up a website in WordPress, I'm really only thinking about 2 different pages, right? There's a page that has the purpose of generating an audience or generating some trust and credibility around my brand and helping to guide them. Or there are pages, and these are generally landing pages, where I actually want you to take action. So now let's go through quickly the actual specific patterns that I use over and over again, and we'll show some examples in the wild. So just kind of running down through a page itself, I'm going to go and break down each and every one of these sort of components that oftentimes I'll put together. Gutenberg makes this really easy. You can make these into blocks and turn them into blocks that I sort of put together in order to construct almost every page that I would design or build. So this is the kind of the typical, again, landing page, instant lead capture. We're going to have a little call to action, some copy here, and then we're going to grab them in a form. Name, email, phone number, tell us a little bit about your problem. Kind of pretty simple. Here it gives you an idea where you can start to get a little creative. This is a section that I often use, and you'll see out there to build trust and credibility. Maybe we've got some logos here. Maybe we've got a case study. I'm a big proponent of case studies, actually showing examples of how people use your product or service. And then this is one that we're kind of actually playing with. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. We're actually kind of shifting this a little bit. In this case, we're actually putting the case study first and foremost, because we're seeing a lot of success with people actually downloading and using these case studies and then reaching out to ask us about our services. And then we're actually enhancing the credibility and trust. Instead of just doing kind of a logo farm, we're actually very specifically choosing logos for clients that were in that specific industry or were very specific to that type of case study, and sort of tightening up or niching down sort of where we're trying to attempt. Then another thing I like to do is kind of the secondary call to action. So even on a landing page, maybe they're not ready to do kind of the full commit, is having a slightly lesser call to action, a slightly lesser sort of lower friction point. This can be, again, downloading an ebook. Maybe you require an email, maybe you don't. But so this could be kind of a lead capture. This can be an email capture. Again, just sort of having that secondary moment to try to capture them if they're not ready to sort of talk to a salesperson, so to speak. Credibility, this is where oftentimes you'll see kind of a stack of blog posts or those sorts of things in here. Again, an opportunity to just show them that there's some more depth, and this is that anchor that we talk about. And then the upside down header, or in this case, more commonly known as the footer. Oftentimes, a lot of things that we try to stack up into the header, if you've ever worked with a large organization, you know, everybody's competing to put their link up in the primary navigation. We've actually been able to sort of constrain this and talk people into, hey, let's pile it up down here at the footer. And it's just as effective, especially as people are used to just kind of scrolling with their phone, that people get down to the bottom much more than they used to. All right, so let's do a quick live example just to kind of show you what maybe this looks like. This is something that we just kind of did recently, and I'm just going to reinforce all those themes here. So we've reduced the primary navigation to the phone number, which is a super powerful way to trigger an action. And then we've also got this contact. This is actually the primary thing that we want them to do. But sometimes, and then the context of this is a real estate investor who can give you a cash offer on your home. Sometimes they're interested in just kind of, I call them looky-loos. They're just kind of interested in maybe what the value of their home is and and whether or not, what type of kind of cash offer they might be able to get. But some people, so that's kind of the easy get. But some people have a little bit more of a complex issue or scenario, and they actually want to talk to you with a little more detail. And so this kind of allows you to push them off to a little bit more detailed form. This is kind of the credibility piece. We're going to show you exactly how simple it is. We're going to show you homes that we've actually purchased. Again, building that credibility and trust. We're going to give you a little bit of depth. If you're still in the process of researching, figuring out if this is the approach you want to do, we're going to make that kind of super simple. And then we're going to go for a second attempt at the submit. So once we've kind of moved you through there, yeah, that kind of looks like my house. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in this process as compared to maybe using a realtor, and give them one more opportunity to kind of engage with us. And then I love using frequently asked questions. This is where you can put a lot of depth and content inside of that, super quick, easy to get a commit and a lead out of it. But oftentimes there's still some questions that they've got left with, or still a little bit of research they need to do to reinforce that. Using accordions, again, great implementation of Gutenberg blocks. You can put a lot more in-depth content in here to really kind of help with that research. Again, secondary sort of lower friction call to action. And then this is an example of that kind of upside down header. We're actually cramming sort of more information. You can actually navigate back into the site. Obviously, the landing page, I don't want them to leave this page, but if I get all the way down to the footer, I don't want to lock them in either. So hopefully that gives you kind of a concrete example there. Now let's go through the actual patterns themselves. And this is kind of the last part that I'm going to kind of go through. And I'm going to give you, again, this is sort of the swipe file part of it. I'm going to give you some very specific patterns that you can pick up and use over and over again. So get your questions ready. And we're going to kind of go into the question and answer right after this. So hopefully we've got a lot of specific questions out of you as to how to potentially implement this with your own clients or your own website. So here's one common one, is just the form. I love to, just to kind of throw out sort of what we use, love to use gravity forms for this. You can implement any type of form. It can be, equip a couple of fields. It could be relatively long. But the pattern here is, again, we're going to, whoops, got a little head. We're going to actually reduce what we're doing in the navigation, right? I love to just, if I can get away with it, just do the hamburger menu. Because everybody knows what that is now. They're so, been so familiar with it on your mobile phones. And then all I'm doing here is telling you kind of exactly what I do and how I do it different. And then if you want some more information about that, or you want to reach out to me, or you want to get that extra sort of content, then let's go ahead and fill out this form. Here, I just went and grabbed some very, common examples of this. And again, you'll see this is where the creativity comes into play. You can see two very different implementations, but the pattern is the same. I've got my basic sort of call to action, why you want to fill this form out, and then I leave the form here. And then, like I showed you in some of the other examples, you can then continue to support that decision as you move down through. My thing keeps moving on me. As you move down through the actual page. Same thing that's going on here. They just kind of chose to put that call to action up here, put the form underneath, and then again, some additional sort of anchor content to help reinforce that decision and get that form filled. This is a pattern that we often use when you're working, or maybe you've got a SaaS implementation where you're actually trying to drive them to sign up for something or sign up for your software. Again, you need to kind of step them through a process. You might actually need to kind of get some more information to create or implement or stand up their SaaS software. And so you'll see this pattern of sort of a call to action, a button that gets them started into that implementation process. Again, some imagery here to give them a good foundation for exactly what they're going to get if they push this button. And again, here's some two perfect examples of that pattern in the wild. This is Slack, right? They want to move you into actually setting up your Slack account. This is a good use of just kind of giving you, it's a little thematic. It's not exactly what Slack's going to look like, but they give you a really good indication of what you're going to get if you push that button. Same thing here with close. This is a SaaS CRM system. So again, getting you started to setting up your CRM system, little indication of what that's going to look like. Here's another common pattern. We saw this before with the insurance company and the mortgage company, sort of getting that first element or that first data point in your form, and then you're going to move them through a more lengthy process because this happens a lot in financial services where you just have to collect a lot of information. So you got to figure out a more efficient way to sort of get them sort of started instead of looking at that really long form. So again, this is a common pattern for lengthier forms. And I'm going to show you one other pattern for this, but just get them started with that one sort of commitment, and then you'll move them in to sort of the more onerous data collection that you're going to need to do. This is an example of a really popular way to do lead generation. So for lead generation companies that make their whole living around collecting in the consumer's data and then selling that to a lender or to a bank. I've got an example of LendingTree. I've got an example of a insurance company here. One of the common patterns here is to make that data collection super easy. So using sort of stylized radio buttons to just get a yes or no question, and then quickly moving through that form, literally one question at a time, and just making it really easy to submit your responses. So you can see here, even at LendingTree, are you looking for a home loan? You click that, then you move through. And so you can collect a lot of data. In these industries, they're oftentimes we're collecting, 20 pieces of information. If you listed out a traditional form and made people fill out 20 rows of data, they would just never get through it. They would never even start it. But by breaking that up into these little incremental one step and then making it really easy to put that input in, you can make a very long form very efficient. And it gives a lot of advantages to sales. So this is a pretty powerful, a little more complex pattern, but very powerful. Some other common, just kind of general patterns. These are some patterns that we can also implement inside of content. You can use content blocks. You can use, again, Gutenberg blocks, but just kind of the common email sign up and having this little block where you're kind of telling them what they're going to get, and you're getting them to either collect that email or getting them to kind of take that first step. This is what I call the influencer conversion. See a lot of examples of this. This is really powerful when you're trying to collect emails for your newsletter. Make it feel personal, put your face there, tell them that you're actually writing the newsletter or the email, give them a sense of what they're getting, who else is on that email list, or maybe a testimonial, and you can very quickly and efficiently get that email address by, again, making it personal with sort of that influencer look. Here's a common pattern for if you're going to actually give away an ebook or a checklist or any sort of lead magnet, again, sort of describing what you're going to get, and then, give a little bit of a picture of what that is, and then using this kind of longer form collection. This is great for events, checklists, those sorts of things. Implementing video to kind of do the same thing. Video sales letter is sometimes what we call it, and just doing all of this with sort of a personal interaction with the video, and then getting them to kind of move through the next step. If you get the opportunity and you're comfortable with using video, I would always suggest doing the video. Here's a case study one. I talked about this a little bit. Case studies are super powerful. Just to embed that PowerPoint presentation or just show the cover of the slide deck and converts very nicely. It gives them a sense that they kind of download something. You can even do this without collecting the email, and that can be powerful too. Again, in the sense of privacy, giving them something to take away, they're going to come back to you. So not always being so grabby for the email can be really powerful too. There's something sort of aha and wow about the moment of clicking that download button and actually directly getting the content without having to give your email that I think is a powerful pattern that we're using more and more. We talked about this one. So last two things, don't waste your blog content, right? It's a great opportunity to build some goodwill. Give them something in there. You can see I used one of those patterns in the middle of my blog post to give them kind of a no email download. So usually your lead magnets, embed those in there, get an opportunity to grab their engagement, get them to take an action. Even if you don't get an email out of it, even if you don't get a form fill in, taking that action will reinforce them as a customer and your brand in their mind. build out a resource center, support them with this. We're going to talk about this on the second one, but give them some more content to go to and talk about it as a resource center for them to use. This is one that I see wasted all the time. Your categories. Intentionally set up your categories and then use those category pages as resource centers. Get them to rank. They can be so powerful. So you have to do a little bit of customization to make that work. You want to kind of use a description as to what you're going to get. And then you can stream in all those blog posts around that one category, create a lot of density around that keyword. Use the pattern interrupt to actually give them something they can take away. And so that becomes your lead generation tool. Go ahead and break up that loop. Stick that pattern interrupt in there. And then, of course, just call it what it is, a resource center instead of a category page, and start to use those because WordPress is going to generate it for you. You might as well leverage it. Okay, questions. Here's all my contact information. The slides there, again, you can grab it, the text message. Super active on Twitter, but you're welcome to contact me any way you need. So Amanda, I'll give it to you and you can... I think you're on mute, Amanda.
Yeah, sorry. I knew that would happen. All right, that was awesome, Bill. And as always, you had some great examples. So I think everyone really took a lot away from that. The one question I want to make sure that we do ask, because there are some people who are from, overseas or I think from Canada. Will the text still work? Is there another way that they could get the slides without texting?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that. Let me, I'm going to fix that. We'll ask some more questions and I'll give you a specific link to go to there.
Okay, great. And I texted it during your presentation and got the link to the slides right away. So that's awesome. I really like that you incorporated that. I know there was a lot of wow, he's lead generating during his presentation on lead generation.
Yeah, it's good to be able to kind of see it in action, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Bud had said, best way to capture a lead is give them something for free that they otherwise would have had to pay for. And that really works. That was one of the things you touched on. Do you think that's the best, one of the best ways to generate leads?
Yeah, I'm always a big believer, and I'm going to grab this other link here real quick. But I'm always a big believer in kind of giving value first, and then from there, sort of talking about the next thing. And again, oftentimes when somebody comes into your website, they know they want to buy the product. They're just trying to figure out incrementally what they need to do or answer to really kind of make that final decision. So by giving them something, this is why I love the case studies. By giving them a case study that shows them kind of how this thing works, or how it is to work with you, is super powerful, because case studies, what often happens with those presentations and even presentations like this, you'll hand it to your boss, you'll hand it to your colleague, or you'll hand it to maybe your spouse, because oftentimes decisions, whether you're buying a mortgage, you're getting a mortgage, or you're engaging with an agency, or you're buying a software product, usually, whether it's B2B or B2C, there's a couple people involved in that decision. And so by giving them something like that lead magnet, it can be shared around and collaborated internally to help solidify that decision, and then they come back to you for the sales inquiry. So yeah, I always like to give them something that sort of sits on their desk and just kind of constantly creates a sense of urgency to reach out to me again.
Right. Okay, great. And then we had another comment about just filling out lead forms. Do you ever use something like a progress bar or something? I mean, normally I know, lead generating forms are pretty short, but we had a comment from Shanta about, she gets frustrated when she doesn't know how much longer she has to keep going through a process. So is that something that you incorporate or recommend?
Yeah, I'll bring this up. Sorry for the distraction, but so you can use that URL to download them directly. Normally I try to keep the form as short as possible. That's kind of the best practice. If you can keep just, only collect the data that you actually need to make that contact. So that's kind of the first sort of best practice. But if you're in something like financial services or you're actually selling leads and you really do have to, collect all of that information, maybe even for compliance, you need to collect all of this information so you can be compliant when you're reaching back out. In that case, when I'm going through and kind of showing, this sort of scenario, um, then often, yes, there's a progress bar. I'll let them kind of know that they're moving through that form. And this is pretty efficient because it's just kind of one click on every step. And so they usually move through that without any problem. But that's when I kind of implement the progress bar. If it's just a couple of pages, or I'm going to just move them through two steps, then I probably don't kind of use the progress bar. But yeah, absolutely. People kind of want to know what they're getting involved in, especially if it's particularly long.
Right. And even maybe just having, step one, step two, like if it is a multi-step thing, it probably
Yeah.
helps. We had a question. Oh, well, if you want to share this, what do you use for the text, like what you're doing for
Oh,
generation?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do a lot of lead generation. So we actually use a tool called callaction.co. And it actually allows us to build campaigns. Again, we do a kind of a fairly complex lead generation. And so it actually allows us to reach back out. And you may see a little bit of this if you used it with me. It allows you to kind of reach back out with voicemail, as well as text, as well as email. So as you kind of move through, it helps to simulate an actual real sales outreach without the salesperson kind of having to do the drudgery of kind of running after people all the time. So you can automate a lot of those steps. But it's callaction.co.
Thank you. I hope you guys got that if you're interested in, in implementing text into your marketing plan. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. We have about 4 more minutes left. So, what are your thoughts on social sign-in for lead gathering?
Mm. Yeah, we do use social or the social sign-on, particularly if you're a SaaS company. You've got a software as a service platform. It's a great way to start the implementation. A lot of times, those SaaS platforms are using some of the integrations with Google or with Facebook. And so, yeah, if you can do that, super powerful. There's some other APIs that you can integrate into your forms. So I could do a whole session on just kind of making efficient and effective forms. But the other thing, each and every field that you're kind of integrating, the easier you can make that field to fill out, is going to make that form collection easier. One of the obvious ones is using the Google API, kind of a similar sort of thing, to auto-populate the addresses. So again, we do a lot with financial services. We're collecting like home addresses and that sort of thing. So we use the Google API. So as you start typing your home address, it just automatically starts to auto-complete that and make it easier for you to put in a pretty complex set of data, your street address, your city, your state, and your zip. That Google API makes that easy to do. So whether it's the social sign-in or even just looking at each and every data field that you're collecting, look for APIs or ways to make that data entry easier and more efficient for sure.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. We have a couple other questions here. I think, okay, so next one. Can you talk more about that anonymous lead generation through Google?
Okay. Yeah. So one of the challenges we've had as an advertising agency is as people get more and more concerned about privacy, or even this is for our international friends as well, as some of the rules and regulations become more constraining around privacy and the handling of private information. A lot of times for that initial visitation, that initial engagement, we like to use other platforms to kind of put ourselves back in front of that user. And it also helps us to monetize essentially every single visitor. So if you come to our site, we want the opportunity to continue to engage with you. And so whenever possible, if they get to your site, and again, you want to use remarketing, there's a thing called a Facebook pixel. So it's associated with Facebook ads. And then, of course, Google ads also has its tracking mechanism. By implementing those, and it's a little bit complex, but you can definitely do the research. It's not too simple, but you can put that on your website, and then every time they hit that website, you will be able to advertise to that custom audience in Facebook or in Google, and be able to continue to show them ads or engage them later. So a little more advanced technique.
Okay, I think we have about 1 minute left. So is there a quick question we can get to? We have a lot of comments about your amazing background, Bill. So that's nice. And
I
yes,
had to
so
bring all the plants from the office to my home, so it's my little greenhouse.
all right. So
Yeah,
Bill will be available in the WordCamp Kent channel on our Slack. So if you guys have more questions for him, and obviously you have his contact info, so you can ask your questions if you have more. But thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Bill, for being here and for a great
awesome.
presentation.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for all
All
you
right.
attending, and we'll see you in one of those chat rooms.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.